we're here today, and I'm thrilled to welcome a very accomplished leader in the food service distribution industry for our very first inaugural FWA storytelling video series for LinkedIn and for our website. Suzanne has dedicated over 4 decades in our industry, demonstrating exceptional leadership and strategic vision. She served as the CEO at Ginsberg's Foods for 30 years and is a past chairman at the International Food Service Distributors Association and served on the governing board of Unipro Food Service. Suzanne, we are incredibly eager to hear your insights and your stories. And what we're going to talk about today is the challenge of being the only woman in the room and the challenge of facing gender bias. And of course, you would have experience over your entire career, both at a junior level and at the highest level of that C-suite and board level. So with that being said, I am so excited to pick your brain and gain some wisdom and insights from you that our members, I know, will find extremely valuable. So we will start off with the very first question. Can you guide us a little bit in the specific language or communication techniques that you've personally found very effective in asserting yourself and gaining respect in those environments, in the boardroom, in the C-suite, and maybe even down to the junior level?
Sure. Well, first off, thank you. And thank you for asking me to be part of this. And this is something that is very near and dear to my heart because I've experienced the trials and tribulations of getting a seat at the table, being the only woman around that table or only female. And early in my career, I realized that clarity, confidence, and preparation for that were my strongest tools. And I also believed in using collaborative language. And so it wasn't me versus them, I recommend or based on our data or our purpose versus I think or I believe, my approach was that I wanted to be thoughtful, but also collaborative. And I paid close attention to those nonverbal clues around the table. So being present, making eye contact, and acknowledging everyone around the table, whether it be with subtle nods of your head or leaning in forward. I wasn't necessarily clawed back. I was very intentional. And I always made it a point to express gratitude because I really feel when you are graceful and express gratitude, it really builds goodwill and trust. And really in high stake meetings where I was the only woman at the table, I made sure I was prepared, facts and anticipated objections. So I'll give you an example. Early on in my career during a high stakes vendor negotiation meeting, I really led with margin analysis and customer insights. So it wasn't just about speaking up, it was being prepared, having facts, and speaking with purpose, that you kind of weren't wasting anybody's time. And it really gained me credibility.
Yep. I think the preparation piece really resonates with me, where it gives you that confidence that you spoke of, Suzanne, and it gives you that clarity because you're not coming from a place of being on the back foot, but you're coming deeply knowledgeable about what you're speaking to. And I think that is preparation is a very good insight along with everything else that you shared. But yes, that I personally use that a lot as well and find it to be empowering.
For sure.
Very good. And when you're in situations where you're using this language, you've done your preparation, you're speaking with clarity, you're really showing up as the best version of yourself, and an idea is dismissed or someone in the room takes credit for an idea, are there specific ways that you navigated that to ensure that your credit is going where it's due?
Yeah, I have a couple suggestions here, and it really happened to me more than once. And when someone really repeated one of my ideas and gained traction, I'd calmly say, I'm glad you brought that up. I mentioned a similar approach earlier in our discussion, and let's build on that. Here's how we can build on it. It reinforces my contribution while keeping the tone collaborative. Because if you say, I brought that up and you didn't listen to me, it puts people on a defensive posture. I also learned the power of documentation, and after meetings, I'd summarize a few key takeaways and actions and kind of put them in writing. And it created a clear trail of who the originator was. My voice was more visible, but it was, again, collaborative in nature. Let's work together on this project, or let's work together on these takeaways that we discussed at the meeting. I didn't single out I discussed or I brought. It was always we, not I. Yeah. So, I really feel like you need to create that documentation. I encourage women on my team to also do that, to take that follow-up from a great discussion today, great meeting today. This is what I heard. Let's work together on these takeaways. Yeah. And I apologize. I have a tendency to talk with my hands, so.
I do too.
Okay, good.
Well, I think something I want to expand on there, Suzanne, is that's good advice for any professional, full stop.
Sure.
I think the mental load of being present in a meeting and taking notes was previously a lot. And I've personally found that solved by using AI. And so as long as it's allowed by everybody in the room, I have AI taking notes on every call, every meeting. AI is taking notes. And I think that is a great unlock for professionals just like us who want to be present, want to be in the moment and not trying to multitask when taking notes, but also then being empowered with notes that let you follow up.
Right.
So that's a nice little tie-in to how we can all leverage AI to do exactly that.
That's great. And I've never used AI to take notes in a meeting. So that's a tremendous takeaway for me. And a lot of my high-powered meetings kind of later on in my life, there was always, someone doing that. And we had that record of what was being discussed. And some of those bigger boards, oftentimes those people were attorneys.
Right.
So they probably wouldn't allow AI to be note-taking but you never know. I mean,
you never know.
But I think that's great. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And how do you and how have you advocated for yourself when it comes to that tricky conversation around a promotion or a tricky conversation around a raise? What are I'm sure an answer here could be quite broad, but let's go deep. What are some specific ways that you frame data or evidence to support the case? And I've personally seen people say, well, I work really hard, or I have a mortgage to pay. That's not gonna work. So I'd love your guidance as to the things that are going to move the needle here and make the strongest case.
For sure. And you need to take the emotional side out of a conversation when it talks about promotion or raises. And I really relied on metrics and results. I brought in sales growth, cost savings, supplier performance, team development outcomes. And I also presented comparisons to peers in similar roles. And I was fortunate enough to be part of an IFTA benchmarking tool that provided data and job description and how my performance may have exceeded or outperformed some of those industry standards. So it kind of shifted the conversation from personal worth to what value I bring to the business, which helped kind of diffuse bias and really was more factual based. And I also tried to document my achievements quarterly, so it wasn't necessarily a historical Bible of prior year accomplishments. I would send in a quarterly update and document that maybe wasn't even necessarily asked for, but wanted it put in my performance file as this is the Q1 accomplishments, objectives, accomplishments, objectives, accomplishments. So it was kind of up to date and current, but also memorialized, not just on an annual basis, but on a quarterly basis.
Yes. I believe that that is such good advice, because if you think about someone who is tasked with doing their annual review, the mental load of sitting down and trying to remember all that you've accomplished over the past 11 months can be overwhelming, and people put it off. And then you don't necessarily put your best foot forward because you're trying to do it after hours and just hit a deadline. So having dedicated time quarterly, whether or not you send it to your direct boss, having that time dedicated quarterly to summarize what were the big things that aligned to my KPIs that I delivered against. The other thing that I think about for our members is a lot of people have challenges with resume building. That is exactly the type of data points that you would want to include in a resume, specific and measurable accomplishments. And you could pull from having every single quarter spending an hour and just documenting that stuff. And then you've just got a plethora of accomplishments to choose from to make your resume even stronger.
And you're right. When you do it quarterly, you're more in the moment. It's more retrospective on the last 3 months, and it's more meaty. It's more beneficial and true. I mean, it complements your resume as well as your LinkedIn profile, because there could be pieces of that quarterly performance that are really great call outs that maybe you need to give it, you can give it that attention in that moment.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I want to jump to a question that I think will be really helpful and insightful for our members, which is around mentors and allies and even friends in the industry. I know you had mentioned at the start of our call, before we were recording, a group that you are involved in of female leaders and CEOs cross industry. And when you guys connect, how the common themes that bind you are around speaking with candor, speaking with courage, and speaking with care. And I think that really separates you and the women that you work with. So maybe can you guide us a little bit in some specific qualities that you find very valuable in peers, in mentors? How do you actively seek out those relationships when you find people that do embody those qualities as well?
I've been fortunate that you work in, I looked within my sphere of influence as well as my circle of influence and my circle of opportunities. And I tried to look outside my industry to complement myself as a business leader, because I always felt that working for the same company for 40 years was a disadvantage. So I felt like it was a disadvantage. So I was very intentional and very purposeful at building relationships outside of my industry to kind of, make me a better leader and a better asset to the company I worked for all those years. And that was whether it was within the buying group that we were a member of, or the association like IFTA that allowed me to have a network of people that were different than what I looked like or the company that I led. But also it provide connections with resources, and that CEO round table, it's called Conversation and Cocktails, started during the pandemic to try to help women that were either displaced or out of work. And we just tried to kind of get together. And it was through my support of Circana and Supply Track and NPD that I became aligned with the woman that put this group together. And again, I was the misfit in that group, because at the time, Circana was all about beauty and retail and media. And, food service distribution wasn't so sexy, and food away from home spend, people were, at that time, we all focused to retail and retail spend. So, I looked I want to say that I gravitated toward people, both men and women, who elevated others and weren't threatened by strong voices, and also who were respected in their organization. And I didn't really wait for mentorship to come to me. You know, I kind of went out and asked for it. Like, do you have a minute? Can we have a 30-minute meetup or coffee meeting? Just to, talk about maybe projects that I'm working on. But also I wanted to make sure that I didn't waste their time. So I always showed up prepared, and I always felt like what I got, I wanted to give. To me, mentorship is a two-way street. And it's really about, honest feedback, and making sure that you, like I said, you were prepared, that you gave, you kind of gave as well as got. So, and I wouldn't have gotten to recommended on those board seats, without those mentorships, because they told me that I was ready and I needed to take that leap, and I needed to push myself to take that risk to be the first female as the IFTA chairperson, that it wasn't about the gender, it was really about the capacity and the ability and what I had to offer, and the diversity of ideas, because I think that was important for that association. So
yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think we'll probably close it out with a question around specific resources or tools or training programs that you've found very valuable. You mentioned being chairman of the board for IFTA. You've mentioned conversations and cocktails. Are there, and obviously those are at a very senior C-suite level.
they are.
So for our members starting their careers, are there any, FWA comes with many resources and many tools, and are building out training programs as well. Are there anything additional specifically that you think would be helpful, especially to young women starting their careers in food service now?
I think LinkedIn Learning has become a powerhouse. It's become a tremendous asset. There are classes, curriculum, well done, current, diverse, and I don't think that you can minimize the value of what LinkedIn Learning offers to people, whether it be leadership, any development aspect. So I'm very intentional about taking every day, taking LinkedIn Learning classes, whether you want to hone in on a specific skill, writing, public speaking, being prepared, meeting preparation. There are so many avenues. And I'm not trying to be an infomercial for LinkedIn Learning. But the other thing that I want to recommend for women today is, don't lose sight of the fact of, Alicia, you told me your involvement, your children, community involvement gives you an opportunity to practice your leadership skills, your organizational skills, collaboration skills of getting things done. I mean, I am a firm believer that you should put yourself out there in the community, not only to give back, but use it as the practice board on things you would like to accomplish on a board someday, or use it as a way to get things done. What were those obstacles? What were those negative interruptions that may have deterred you from moving forward? So I really feel like you have, as a person, not only a civic duty, but it's a great way for you to practice your mentorship and practice supporting other people.
Yep. We talk so much about the diversity of voices. I think at an individual level, the diversity of experience is what you're speaking to, and how that professional experience, that personal experience, and that maybe even local community or virtual community experience gives you an added toolkit as you think about your personal development, your professional development. And you don't just get placed on a board because of your name or the way you look. You get placed on a board because of your capabilities. So if you want to take that step in your career, as you did, to be on 2 separate boards, I think that's really good advice of there's stepping stones. What do those look like?
For sure.
Good. Wonderful. Well, Suzanne, I know that you are the founder and president now of Food Service Forward. And so if any of our members wanted to reach out to you, is the best way through LinkedIn?
It is, but I could give you, it's Suzanne at foodserviceforward.com. I am more than happy and to support any aspiring woman, leader, manager, mid-line manager. Oftentimes you need a sounding board of this is the situation I'm in, what would you do, or this is what I'm thinking, doesn't make sense. And having that outside person that's not necessarily involved in that dynamic can give you good perspective. And I'm happy to help. As I said, I'm enjoying chapter 2, and it's all about paying it forward. And I've gotten a lot, and it's time for me to give this community everything I can, whether it be through experience or mentorship or collaboration or work within the industry. It's in my heart. So, and I feel I welcome the opportunity to help women and people be successful. So
that's wonderful. Well, Suzanne, it is an honor to get to pick your brain today and to just begin to share. I think it certainly warrants many more conversations as this grows, and sincerely appreciate your willingness to pave it forward for people in our industry. And I think that it's a real gift to us and our members. So thank you so much for your time today.
My pleasure. And thank you, Alicia, for putting forth a great discussion and great questions. And I look forward to contributing in the future.